What's up YouTube, Dal here from Zephyr War Games, and this week is the release of the brand new Traptrix structure deck, and I personally feel that this deck can do really well against the meta and can be a very competitive deck. So, in order to give you as much information as possible and give you a step ahead of the game, I'm going to give you a rundown of all of the cards that you should go out and buy in order to increase the capacity and the competitive ability of the Traptrix structure deck due out this week. I'm also going to put on screenshots of all of the prices that I was able to find around, some of the cheapest, some of the best options for you guys as well, so you can see everything you can get and where to get it from. With all of that out of the way, please smash that like button, hit that notification bell, and subscribe. Getting this video above 50 likes will unlock more content for the Traptrix build up, whether you should be buying the structure deck or not buying the structure deck, and of course a full power build and a budget build to keep you on your toes. With all of that out of the way, let's dive headfirst into the first card that you should be going out and buying, and that is of course Dimension Shifter. So this is, of course, one of the hand traps of the format, and it's one of them ones that, yes, when Tier Elements was running rampant, was definitely a must be putting in the deck. Now it's kind of a questionable one because if you are going to be facing the majority of Kashtira's, it's pretty much a dead card. However, when you are facing more of the rogue decks, sometimes it can hurt Branded quite a bit, sometimes it can definitely hurt Sprites, but more of the top competitive decks are actually able to play around this. Considering that it's only £1 per copy on tier0games.com, it's definitely worth picking up a playset. Whether you're going to put it in the side, whether you're going to main it, and depending on the local environment you're going to be going to, it will depend on whether it's a card that will be incredibly powerful for you and near enough an auto win, or a card that you might want to consider putting into the side deck. Moving on to the second card. So the second card is actually a little bit more expensive, but it's a card that I kind of consider to be really good. The one thing that Traptrix really lack is they lack a boss monster. I will mention some other boss monsters that I have used in the past, stuff like Fusion Destiny into Destroy a Phoenix Enforcer, and I do also mention in the list a Lord of the Heavenly Prisons, which is only like £4 on Tier 0 games, so definitely worth keeping an eye out of, because not only can that protect your back row, it is a boss monster that can pretty much search you any card in your deck. Well, any spell or trap that is. So, talking about the Lady Labyrinth, the reason I've put this card in here is sitting at about £10 to £11 on eBay. You can probably pick up a playset for about £25 to £30. And the reason I consider this is it is a nice boss monster in the main deck, so it doesn't clash with some of your new Traptrix cards. It does have a very decent booty of 2900 and attack of 3000. If that wasn't enough, it can be special summoned down at any point during the turn as long as a normal trap card or a Labyrinth monster effect has been activated except itself. Now, obviously, you are only going to be relying on being activating a normal trap card, but the fact you can special summon this down turn 0 or your technically turn 1 by activating Shade Brigadine or the new Traptrix, basically trap hole card that becomes a Shade Brigadine, gives you so many ways to get to it. And then when a normal trap card is activated, you get to set another normal trap card from the deck with a different name. Again, this is a perfect example with the new cards in the Traptrix deck, because straight away, for example, you could activate Shade Brigadine, activating the trap card, triggering the Lady Labyrinth to special summon herself down. You could then activate the other new Traptrix trap card, which will allow you to trigger the Lady, letting you set any trap card from your deck, D-Barrier, complete blowout, and then you've got an instant rank 4 play as well, not to mention a few more plays to make, and especially if you wanted to go down the Sarah route or anything else like that, you have multiple options to explore. Now, like I said, this is probably a bit more expensive on the list of the cards you could be picking up, but it's definitely one you want to be keeping an eye on. The next one that is really important for that is Infinite Impermanence. Now, the reason this is so important is because it's a normal trap card. It is a hand trap. It ticks all of the boxes that Traptrix really need. Now, at current, it's sitting about £5.50 to about £6 a copy. You can definitely pick up a playset for about £15, maybe less if you've got a friend that's just got the Cyber Strike structure decks lying around. But what makes this structure deck so good is it already comes with Ash Blossom and it already comes with Evenly Matched, and you kind of complete certain sections. On top of that, getting Infinite Impermanence will help you trigger your Sarah, which is your main extra deck monster for the Traptrix, and of course it can trigger the Lady Labyrinth as well. Then of course, moving on to the last card that I personally feel you should definitely get in for the main deck, and that is Parallel XZs. Now, it has had a common print, a super print, and a secret print, and it is currently sitting at about £2.50 to £3 as a common. I feel if you've got a really good friend, you can definitely pick up a playset for about £5 just to get the commons out of their binder or out of their bulk. But what makes this card so good is literally Shade Brigadine into Link Spider with this in the hand gives you instant rank 4 access. On top of that, the more common play you're going to be making is turning any Traptrix monster into Sarah, special summon out the parallel XZs, get another XZs from the deck, make a rank 4, which can of course be Rafflesia, but it can also be any of the other rank 4s that you're already playing, like Baguska. You could go into a Time Thief Reader, but you kind of want to save that to be used with a trap card. You've also got board blowout cards in the form of the Exciton Knight, leading into a Zeus, depending on what else you have access to or what else you can get your hands on with budget restrictions in mind. And then obviously talking about the Lord of the Heavenly Prisons, which I mentioned previously, this is currently sitting at like £2 for a Mega Pack 2022 Secret. And it's just one of them alternative boss monsters. So if you're like, right, okay, I can't afford Lady Labyrinth right now, but I can get a Lord of Heavenly Prisons. It's a main deck boss monster that has very good stats. And then that will also allow you to protect your back row from stuff like Lightning Storms. Sadly, it doesn't protect it from being even lead, but we will come onto a card in the side deck that I highly advise you picking up in order to kind of deal with that and to look into that as well. So Lord of the Heavenly Prisons is definitely a fraction of the price, and that is one of your other main deck boss monsters. Other boss monsters that you can consider would be the Amazement package. So you play like Arlecchino, and the reason that's so good is because he can pretty much activate normal trap cards that become Book of Moons or become Return to the Hand, so mini compulses. And he is a 2500 boss monster that does have another built-in effect to banish different Amazement cards from the graveyard or trap cards from the graveyard to destroy cards your opponent controls. So he does give you more of a destructive route as well, and he is a 2500 boss monster and does kind of give you a different couple of options. So you've got Lord of the Heavenly Prison, which is probably the cheapest and less, doesn't require as many spaces in the main deck. Arlecchino is probably the second cheapest, but does require you to put in more cards because you'll be looking at maybe Amazement Time Ticket just to get it searched off of it and everything else. And then Lady Labyrinth, in my opinion, is probably the best one of it all because it's going to be very, like, if you play Traptrix and you don't activate a normal trap card, something is going wrong. But that is kind of going to be your most consistent boss monster that you can get out of the main deck. Yes, you can still, like, get rid of it completely and don't even worry about that. There are people that will still play the Double or Nothing Utopia package. That works out very, very well as well. But it is just one of them ones where you've kind of got to consider what you're going to do with your main deck and how you want to play the game. And then moving on to the extra deck. Now, again, what's quite good about this structure deck is it gives you a nice balance. Like, it can pretty much complete a main deck for you, minus those cards I've just mentioned. It can also complete an extra deck, minus a few cards. Like, you get 3 Sarahs from 3 of the structure decks. You've also then got access to Rafflesia. You've got the 2 of the new cards as well. You've also got the Kulia, and I believe the Link 2 or the other rank 4 as well. So you've got the options of everything you need, but there are some other cards out there that you might want to consider. So the first one that I'm going to bring up, and this is just a general out to cash tiers, and that is still Swarm Roach. Now this is a £5 super, a £20 secret if you want to be looking bling bling on your extra deck. But what makes this so good is it gives you the ability to negate the summon not once but twice a turn with something like a Kashtira. So technically they could special summon out the Kashtira monster like Fenrir. You chain the Still Swarm Roach effect, it never hits the board, it goes straight to the graveyard. They do a Unicorn, effect goes to the graveyard. Now, obviously, if they have more Kashtira monsters, they're going to keep doing it and doing it and doing it. And because you negate their summon, they never actually activate their effect. So if they do open up, for example, like 3 Unicorns or 2 Unicorns and a Fenrir, you're going to be negating them summons, and then you're just hoping they don't have the rest. It is a cool rank 4 option because it is generic, and it does cause a lot of issues for the Kashtira matchup. So if you do expect to be facing that on the regular and very, very, like your locals are going to be flooded with them, this is definitely a card that you should be looking into. The next one is also an Evil Swarm, and this is, of course, Exciton Knight. And the reason I've gone with this is just for a cheaper option in comparison to Zeus. Now, I know Zeus is obviously going to be ideal. Zeus is the better boss monster. However, Zeus is looking at £30, whereas Exciton Knight is only £4.50, and Exciton Knight could technically be made turn 1. Exciton does destroy all other cards. It doesn't send them, which can be another downside. But what Exciton Knight will give you is it does give you the ability, should you Book of Eclipse your opponent, should you negate their board, you make an Exciton Knight very easily. You don't even need to attack with an XYZ. You can use this effect and you can destroy the entire board. It still is like a once per chain effect, so it can be done during your opponent's turn as well, which does give you a budget option to Zeus. And it's definitely one, if you don't have access to Zeus or aren't planning to get one, this is your next best alternative for a 1/6 of the price. Then, of course, Baguska. Baguska is pretty straightforward and simple on this one. You get it for like 50p, which is probably like $1, I don't know, maybe even 50 cents in the States. And you put this up from Tier 0 games, very easy. And it's just one of them ones where if your opponent controls the board a lot better than you and it can really slow you down, being able to go into a Baguska against something like a Kashtira deck or a deck that does not rely heavily on links, even looking at the branded matchup, shifting them all to defense, negating their effects while you then regain your resource in the form of your back row will allow you to kind of deal with that as well. Then, obviously, the most important XYZ, in my opinion, that you need to go out and get is the Time Thief Redoer. And the reason this is so important is because you're special summoning 2 trap cards in the form of Shade Brigandine and the new Trap Pole card that act as material. So you overlay that with a Redoer. Not only will Redoer constantly keep stealing stuff from the top of your opponent's deck, but it will also give Redoer the ability to detach materials, run away from the board, but also non-target bounce 1 card your opponent controls to the top of their deck. So you can actually brick loop them if they get a card on the board that they don't want to be going back to the deck and they kind of want it in the graveyard or somewhere else. Now, it can be a little bit damaging, especially if you're going to be playing at high level events, because you will expect some of your opponents to be playing Triple Tactics Thrust, but even then they need to open it and see it. And keep in mind as well, they can't Triple Tactics your Redoer if you activate the effect in the standby phase to attach, because Triple Tactics only triggers it in the main phase. The issue is, if they are playing Triple Tactics Thrust, the chances are they're also going to be playing evenly matched. So you activate Redoer, Redoer's effect to attach, they activate Thrust, they search out evenly matched, they activate evenly matched. It can be very, very damaging. So keep that in mind. But again, depending on your budget, depending on your area, this can be very different for you. Obviously, Zeus, I have to put this on this list because it is just such a powerful card. It can be a little bit risky because you do lose your entire board, but it's just one of the ones where you ideally what you want to be doing is going, okay, cool, I'm going to Book of Eclipse my opponent's entire board. I'm then going to make any rank 4 that I can very easy to get to, attack with it, make a Zeus, Zeus clears the board. Now, when you're trying to make a Zeus, you probably want to make it with as many materials as possible, which is why Exton Knight will do that job just as well. But Exton Knight does require you to have less cards than your opponent. Zeus is obviously a lot more expensive. It's like £32, very, very costly in comparison to something like an Exton Knight as well. Carrying on, Link Spider is one of these cards that I feel is really, really good because what you do is you turn the Traptrix trap card, which will probably go more into Sarah, but is an option, and the Shade Brigandine can go into Link Spider. So the other is you activate Shade Brigandine, you turn it into Link Spider, you then activate Parallel Seas in the hand, get 2 more monsters on the board. You can either use that to Link Climb or you can go into a rank 4 Rafflesia or any of the other, like I think the new XYZ, which gives you the ability to banish a card as well. Then we've got the Usura, the Earth Charmer. The reason this is in here is because all of your Traptrix monsters are Earth monsters. So being able to go into this and then steal your opponent's Fenrir can be very, very powerful. If you wanted to, you can Link Climb higher. You could look at stuff like Selene, Access Code, but then you'll open up a whole new can of worms with additional cost implemented for it. But this is just a generic rank 2 that could be really, really good for your board, depending on which way you want to be going. So that's pretty much it for the extra deck monsters. There are a couple of different options. You can change it around as you want. You've got stuff like Tornado Dragon you could consider. You could also consider, again, like Zeus's. You can go into Access Code, Selene's. Depends on how much budget you're willing to put into the deck and how much you have access to in order to do so. So now let's move on to the extra deck. So the extra deck gets quite important because some of the cards you get in the Traptrix structure deck, you're actually going to want to put in the main. Something like Evenly Matched can be very, very good because it's a normal trap card that can be discarded for some of your effects. On top of that, it's also a normal trap card that helps you break some of the strongest boards around in the form of Kashtira's by being able to go second because you're not always going to guarantee it to win the dice roll. Another card that is incredibly powerful, and this is where Lady Labyrinth comes into play as well, is Dimensional Barrier. Now, you've got to be a little bit careful with Dimensional Barrier because the issue is it negates all XYZs on the field. So if you do have your own Traptrix XYZs and you flip a D barrier on your opponent, keep in mind your XYZs will also be negated. However, being able to D barrier your opponent is very, very important, especially when you're looking at the branded matchup. You hit fusions, that's it, they can't play pass over. You activate D barrier against a Kashtira matchup, unless they've got the ability to spam the board with loads of Kashtira monsters. Again, you're going to call XYZs, that's it, turn over, move on to the next one. And you're just going to be able to keep controlling your opponent's board, which is exactly what Traptrix are all about. Another one that I'd consider for the side deck is Antispell. So you play very few spells in your deck. Now, I could also mention Pot of Prosperity for the main deck, but for now, because I'm trying to keep this as budget contained as possible, and I did mention Zeus at £30, I feel that was kind of like the top bracket. If you want to be putting £120 in because you're going to want 3 pots where you're not going to want 3 Zeuses, then that is something you can consider. However, the amount of spells you're going to be playing in the Traptrix deck is very minimal, and being able to play something like an Anti-Spell Fragrance, definitely against a deck like Kashtira's, where they're going to be wanting to activate their planet, Theosis, Birth, you name it, can be very, very damaging and very, very painful. And that's where, of course, you can go into an Exton Knight, nuke the board, loop around, and go again. Very, very cheap on tier 0 games, so keep your eyes on that one. Another one is Gos and Match. Now, Gos and Match can be a little bit tricky, but the way you work this down is you would literally just go full-on blinker mode, Traptrix control. You'd flip a Gos and Match. Obviously, it can be very, very good against the Kashtira matchup because they play loads of different attributes in the forms of fires, winds, darks as well. So as long as you lock them at the right time, you can really break a board with this deck, but also control a board so it can't be done. Now, obviously, one issue with Gos and Match is if they do get a Fenrir to the board, when Fenrir declares an attack or you activate a monster effect, he can or they can banish that Gos and Match. Keep in mind, it is a very niche card, but it's one of the ones where it's like, right, okay, I can't get in hold of this, I haven't got access to this, so I'm going to go down this route instead. Another one is, of course, Nibiru, the Primal Being. This is sitting at about £5 a copy. You're probably going to want anywhere to 2 to 3. You could put it in the main deck if you wanted to. The reason that this card is so good is the fact that a lot of decks either can't play around it or do not expect it. And then when they do play around it, they have to go out of their way to try and deal with it. So being able to Nibiru your opponent can help you break the board. Again, keeping Cashterias in the mind as well as Branded as well. They're decks that don't really put an Omni Negate on board early on unless they're going to start adapting their playstyle and end on an ultimately weaker board. So something like Nibiru can be incredibly powerful. You can consider stuff with Nibiru alongside Kaijus. You can consider like Lava Golems and Raw Sphere modes, but in a deck like this, you really want your normal summon because all of your effects will trigger. You do have extenders in the form of Parallel Exceeds and the trap cards, but even they are going to be slightly restricted, and you don't want to be able to go, right, okay, I've got 2 normal summons in my hand and then a Lava Golem. Do I Lava Golem or do I try and play my turn? Can be very, very difficult, whereas Nibiru kind of covers that area for you. Yes, it will nuke your board as well, but again, it's one of the ones where if you know your opponent is never going to let you go first unless they are 100% confident that they're going to be able to open up an evenly matched. So Nibiru is very, very powerful to break a board. Another card, of course, is I would say probably one of the cards of the format, and that is Book of Eclipse. You can activate this when you've got Sarah on the board, and Sarah's not going to go anywhere because the monsters can't be flipped face down. That being said, it is just such a powerful board control card against Branded, against Cashterias, and against any deck that does not heavily rely on links. It's a very good option and very, very cheap as well. So I highly advise all your side decks, unless your local say we are not playing cash is not allowed, you might want to consider taking this out. But the chances are you've either got cash or Branded. It's just such a good card that can be used defensively or offensively. And the only issue with activating a card like this in Traptrix is when you activate it, you need to clear your opponent's board, which is why Exton Knight and Zeus exists, because you've got easier routes in order to do so. Moving on to Artifact Lancier. I think Artifact Lancier is kind of a good side card for a side card. And what I mean by that is you put Artifact Lancier in to deal with your opponent putting in evenly matched. Now, everyone's going to have access to evenly matched post the Traptrix structure decks. So being able to drop a Lancier, not only will that slow down your opponent's cash monsters during your turn. So for example, if you drop the Lancier, if your opponent goes to battle phase and you flip a Gozen and you've locked their cash tiers down and their plan is to declare an attack with Fenrir to then banish the Gozen, you can drop a Lancier. Keeping in mind, Lancier can only be dropped during your opponent's turn, not your turn. It will, of course, stop you being evenly that turn. It will, of course, eat up your opponent's battle phase, and it will stop the Fenrir from banishing the cards as well. It will also stop you being Darkest Diablost and banished from your extra deck, and it will also stop Unicorn doing the exact same thing as well. So Lancier is a very good side counter for a deck like Cashterias. It can hurt Branded as well, because doing it against Branded means all of their Biseals are then turned off for their entire turn. Yes, they'll start activating the Biseals during your turn, but it means they can't climb higher. They can't really access the Branded in white play either. So it does give you a very nice kind of control aspect for those matchups. Another component to Lancier in comparison to Solemn Judgement. So Solemn Judgement is one of those cards that you really want to be putting in your side deck because you know evenly matched is going to be making an appearance pretty much game 2s and 3s, if not even in main deck of game 1, which can be very, very painful. Judgement is sitting at £7.50, whereas Lancier is about £2. You'll probably get playset for a £5. So you've got to keep in mind of those. Even if probably the biggest thing that you're worried about, you've got a lot of cards that stop your cards being, or your set cards being destroyed for the first turn of destruction, but nothing really stops from an evenly matched. And that's what you've got to be more worried about than anything else. We've then got the Drama Cannon. So this is just one of them ones where it flips. It's a trap card that is basically Book of Moon, flips everything face down, and then if there are any monsters face up, they then get sent to the graveyard. Can be good. It's a normal trap card, can help you trigger effects. It's just down to personal preference if you've got space for this and if you want to use it. So that's pretty much it for everything. I've covered the main deck, the side deck, and the extra deck, tried to give you as much information as possible. There are, of course, other alternatives out there if you're like, okay, well, maybe I want to go down this route, or I've got more money to spend and I think Traptrix are going to be the next big thing, or something that I'm going to really enjoy, then you can, of course, input more money to them as well. The structure decks themselves do come with everything pretty much you need, bar these cards I've mentioned here. Some are definites, like the Parallel Exceeds, in my opinion, and the Time Thief Redoer. And then some of them are down to personal preference, and if you have access to them, like the Lady Labyrinth, the Lord of Heavenly Prisons, or, of course, the Amazement package as well. Anyway, I hope this has been as informative as I possibly can. If you have any questions at all, please put them in the comments below. I'll be more than happy to answer them for you. If you do want to be seeing more Traptrix content leading up to the release, both a budget build, a opening, should you be buying the structure decks or not, and then of course a full powered build, maybe even duels and control plays as well, then make sure you smash that like button. Getting above 50 likes in the first 24 hours will unlock that for you. But for now, as absolutely always, guys, stay safe and of course, happy dueling.